The first time I heard about Rico, it was 2 in the morning in December 2019 at the Greyhound station in Tucson. I had just spent my last $43 on a bus ticket I never used. I was sitting on a bench in the waiting room because the waiting room was heated and the sidewalk was not. I had not eaten in 2 days. I was trying to stay awake because if I fell asleep on the bench, the security guard would wake me up and tell me to leave, and I had nowhere to go after that. The bus station was the warmest building I had access to. I was not going home. I had no home to go to. There was a man on the bench across from me. He was about my age, maybe a little older. He was wearing a Vietnam veteran ball cap that had been washed so many times the gold lettering was almost gone. He watched me for about 20 minutes without saying anything. Then he stood up, walked over, sat down beside me, and asked me one question. "How long have you been outside?" I told him 5 months. He nodded. He took a pen out of his shirt pocket and a paper napkin from the dispenser on the trash can. He wrote an address on the napkin and handed it to me. He told me to go there in the morning. He told me to ask for Rico. He told me Rico would not give me money. He told me Rico would do something better. The address was a small lot on the south side of Tucson, half a mile from the Air Force Base. The lot had a chain-link fence and 7 vehicles parked in 2 uneven rows. Behind the lot was a single-wide trailer that served as the office. The sign on the trailer door said, "No business hours." The handwritten note below the sign said, "If I am here, I am open." That was where I met Rico. That was where I bought a 2003 Ford Crown Victoria for $420, and that car kept me alive through the next 14 months of my life. Tonight, I'm going to tell you exactly how a homeless veteran finds a $400 car in America, the 7 sources nobody talks about, the 4 checks Rico calls the 4 corners, and the rule that determines whether the car saves your life or ends it. Before any of that, I need to tell you something. The single biggest survival upgrade a homeless man can make is not a sleeping bag. It is not a coat. It is not a shelter bed. It is a running vehicle. The Federal Reserve published a study in 2022 that documented mortality rates among unsheltered homeless men over 50. Men sleeping outside in winter died at a rate roughly 4 times higher than men sleeping inside vehicles in the same climate. A car is not a luxury. A car is a tier of survival you cannot reach any other way. If you have been laid off this year, if your savings have run out, if you are reading this in a hotel room because you can no longer afford rent, the math that brought me to Rico's lot is the same math sitting on your kitchen table tonight. The men I know say the average distance between losing your house and needing a $400 car is 6 weeks. Rico is 71. He is Marine Corps. He did 3 tours in Vietnam between 1968 and 1972. He came home, used the GI Bill to get a mechanic certification, and worked on cars for 41 years. He owned a shop in South Tucson from 1991 until 2014, when his wife got sick and the medical bills took the shop. She died in 2016. After she died, he sold the house, kept the lot, and started buying old cars at impound auctions to flip to veterans for the cost of the auction price plus a small margin. He has put 14 homeless veterans into running vehicles in the past 3 years. I was the 7th. Rico told me that morning there were 7 places a $400 car comes from. The first 3 are the ones the public knows about, sort of. The last 4 are the ones that changed my life. The seventh one took him 15 years to find, and he found it by accident. The first source is the charity auction. Several large national charities receive vehicle donations as tax write-offs from people who do not want to deal with selling an old car. They auction the vehicles in monthly or quarterly sales. The auctions are publicly listed, but almost never advertised. Rico goes to 2 of these auctions every month. He bought a 2002 Buick LeSabre at a Goodwill auction in 2018 for $270. He sold it to a man named Wesley who served in the Army and did 2 tours in Korea. Wesley drove it for 4 years. When it finally died, he had Rico's home phone number memorized. The second source is the towing yard impound sale. When a vehicle is towed and the owner does not pay the fees within 30 to 90 days, depending on the state, the yard sells the car at auction to recover the cost. Rico has a friend at the West Side Yard, a man named Hector, who was a tank mechanic in Desert Storm. They served together for 6 months in 1991. Hector calls Rico every time a Crown Victoria or a LeSabre comes through. Rico has never had to ask twice. The third source is the estate sale after a death. The family lists the car on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, usually at a low price because they want it gone before probate. In 2020, Rico bought a 1998 Camry from a daughter who had just buried her father. Her father was a Korean War veteran. She handed Rico the title without taking his money. She told him her father would have wanted a vet to drive it. Rico gave the car to a man named Tyrone the following day. Those are the 3 sources you can find on your own. The next 4 change the equation. The fourth source is the mechanic. Men like Rico exist in every city in the United States. They are usually older veterans, retired or semi-retired, who run small lots that corporate dealerships do not consider competition. They are in Phoenix, in El Paso, in Albuquerque, and San Antonio. They know each other. They call one another when a man on their lot is heading to a city where another mechanic can help him land. The network has no name. Rico says it does not need one. The fifth source is Facebook Marketplace at the right hour. The wrong hour is any time between 9 in the morning and 9 in the evening on a weekday, when every dealer and flipper is watching the listings. The right hour is between 4 in the morning and 6 in the morning on a weekend, when estate listings posted by exhausted family members sit unanswered until the dealers wake up. Rico does not sleep through the night anymore. He has not since his wife died. He says 4:30 in the morning is when the listings he wants appear, and that is also when the loneliness is worst. The 2 work out to the same thing. The sixth source is the church bulletin board. The secretary at St. Augustine Parish in South Tucson is Maria. She has been posting the same kinds of notices since 1987. She knows Rico by name. Every Sunday morning, she slides the notes into a manila envelope and she hands it to him before Mass. The seventh source is the one no homeless man knows about until someone tells him. Several national programs, including one called Vehicles for Change, donate refurbished vehicles to low-income recipients who meet specific criteria. The application is involved, and the waiting list is long, but for veterans with documented service, the priority is higher than most applicants realize. Rico has put 3 of his 14 vets into vehicles through this channel. The vehicles cost the recipient nothing. The first man he placed through it was a vet named Marcus, who had been outside for 3 years. Marcus drove the donated car for 9 months before he found steady work. He sends Rico a Christmas card every year. Once you have located a car, the next problem is whether it will run for 90 days or whether it will die in a parking lot in January. This is where most men make the mistake that kills them. They buy with their hope instead of their eyes. Rico calls the inspection the four corners. 3 of them are mechanical. The 4th has gotten more veterans arrested than the other 3 combined. The first corner is the engine. You insist on starting the car cold, meaning it has been off for at least 4 hours. A seller who has the car running when you arrive is hiding something. With the engine running, you stand at the back of the vehicle and watch the exhaust. White smoke that does not clear within 30 seconds means the head gasket is failing. Blue smoke means the engine is burning oil. Black smoke means the fuel mixture is wrong. Rico knew a man in 2017 who skipped this check. The head gasket failed 2 weeks later on a stretch of Interstate 40 in the middle of the night. He walked 17 miles to the nearest gas station in 12-degree weather. He lost 2 toes to frostbite. The second corner is the transmission. You pull the dipstick and look at the fluid on a clean paper towel. Healthy fluid is bright red or pink. Old fluid that needs to be changed is brown. Fluid that smells burnt or looks black is a transmission that will fail within months. There is no fixing a transmission on a $400 budget. Rico's first car after Vietnam died this way in 1974. He was 26, and he was lucky enough to be near a phone. The third corner is the frame. You lie on the ground next to the rear wheel and look at the underside of the vehicle along the frame rails. Surface rust is normal on any vehicle over 15 years old. Rust that has eaten through the metal or that has visible holes is structural damage that cannot be repaired affordably. A 2001 Chevy Impala, bought by a Marine named David in 2020, had a frame so rusted that the rear axle separated from the body on the highway. David survived, his dog did not. The fourth corner is the title. You ask to see it before you discuss price. If the title is not in the seller's name, you walk away. If the title says salvage, you walk away unless you understand exactly what that means. If the seller says they will get the title to you later, you walk away. A man named Hector, no relation to Rico's friend at the towing yard, bought a car in 2019 with a pending title. The title was stolen. He was arrested at a traffic stop in El Paso, spent 4 days in county lockup, and lost his job. Rico has trained 14 veterans on the 4 corners. 13 of them followed it. 1 of them did not. His name was Tyrell. He was 46 years old. He served in the 82nd Airborne and did 2 tours in Iraq from 2004 to 2008. He came to Rico's lot in November of 2021 looking for a vehicle. Rico had a 2005 Crown Victoria that day for $450. He told Tyrell to take it. Tyrell looked at the car, decided it was too plain for him, and left. 2 days later, Tyrell bought a 2002 BMW 3 Series from a Craigslist seller for $300. The car looked clean. It had leather seats. Tyrell drove it for 6 weeks before the timing chain broke in a parking lot in Flagstaff in late December. The repair estimate was $2,800. Tyrell did not have $2,800. He sold the car to a salvage yard for $120 and went back outside. In February of 2022, during the same cold snap that killed Anthony Reeves in the storage unit in Phoenix, Tyrell froze to death in a doorway behind a strip mall in Flagstaff. The medical examiner listed the cause of death as hypothermia. The local paper printed a paragraph about it on page 7. The paragraph did not mention his service. The Crown Victoria Rico had offered him for $450, sold to another vet 2 weeks later. That vet, a man named Daryl, drove it for 2.5 years and is still driving it now. Rico has put 12 of his 14 vets into one of 3 vehicles. He has not put a single man into anything else. The two who did not get one of the three are no longer on the road. One of them you already met. The first vehicle is the Ford Crown Victoria, model years 1998 through 2011. The second is the Buick LeSabre, model years 1992 through 2005. The third is the Toyota Camry, model years 1997 through 2006. The reason is parts. A 2003 Crown Victoria shares 90% of its parts with a 2003 Mercury Grand Marquis and a 2003 Lincoln Town Car. There are millions of these vehicles in salvage yards across the country. A starter motor for a Crown Victoria costs $60 used. A starter motor for a 2002 BMW 3 Series costs $240 used, and good luck finding one in a small town junkyard at 4 p.m. when you are stranded. Owning the car is the easy part. The paperwork is where most men fail. There is a sequence, and the sequence has to be done in exactly the right order, or you lose the car within 30 days. I have watched it happen to 4 men. The title transfer requires a current address, which is the same problem the men in the Car Living Network solve with the UPS store mailbox loop. Registration requires proof of insurance. Insurance requires a credit check that the cheapest companies sometimes waive for a higher down payment. The whole sequence in most states takes between 3 and 7 days and costs an additional $100 to $200 on top of the price of the car. Rico walks every man he sells to through this sequence. He keeps the relationship open until the paperwork is complete. Some states are easier than others. Arizona, Texas, and New Mexico have streamlined processes that a man with documented military service can complete in a single afternoon. California, New York, and Massachusetts are nearly impossible without a permanent address that satisfies the state verification requirements. The men I know say the difference between living in a vehicle in Arizona and living in a vehicle in California is the difference between being invisible and being constantly hunted. I drove the Crown Victoria off Rico's lot at 3:30 in the afternoon on December 12, 2019. I paid him $420 in cash. I had $36 left in my pocket. Rico walked me to the car, and he pointed at my pocket. He told me to spend $20 on a full tank of gas and the other $16 on 3 cans of motor oil to keep in the trunk. He told me not to give him any of the $16. He told me that if I ever made it back inside walls, I should remember the day and find another man on a bench in another Greyhound station and do for him what had been done for me. I sat in the Crown Victoria for 10 minutes before I turned the key. I had not driven a vehicle I owned in 4 months. The steering wheel felt strange under my hands. I cried for about a minute. Then I started the engine and drove out of the lot. The car ran perfectly for the next 14 months. It carried me through 2 winters and across 5 states. I slept in it for over 400 nights. It is the reason I am alive to tell you this. I am going to tell you one more thing about Rico at the end of this video. Something that happened 18 months after I drove off his lot. Something I did not expect and something he never asked me to do. The chain of men who keep other men alive in this country runs through small lots like Rico's. It runs through Vietnam vets who became mechanics. It runs through Marine Corps gunnery sergeants who learned how to fix a starter motor in the rain in Da Nang and never forgot. It runs through Maria at St. Augustine Parish, who hands a manila envelope to Rico every Sunday before Mass. It runs through Hector at the towing yard, who calls Rico when a Crown Victoria comes through. It runs through every Facebook Marketplace listing posted at 4 a.m. by an exhausted daughter who just lost her father. The vehicle is not the point. The vehicle is the artifact of the point. The point is that the men inside the system have built another system, a quieter one, that catches the ones the official system drops. 18 months after I drove off Rico's lot, I called him from a payphone outside a gas station in Albuquerque. I had moved into an apartment 3 weeks before. I told him I was working again. I told him I had not slept in the Crown Victoria for 2 months. I told him I was thinking of selling it. Rico was quiet on the line for a moment, then he asked me one question. How long have you been outside? I told him I was not outside anymore. He told me to drive the Crown Victoria to Tucson the following weekend. He told me to give it to him. He told me he had a man on his lot right now who needed it more than I did. The man's name was Esteban. He was 41 years old. He had served in the army, one tour in Afghanistan. He had been outside for 7 months. I drove down on Saturday. I handed Rico the keys. He did not pay me. He did not ask me to sign anything. He walked me to a 1999 Buick LeSabre on the lot and handed me a different set of keys. He told me to drive that one home to Albuquerque. He told me to sell it when I had a real car. He told me the $400 from the sale was my severance from his lot. I sold the Buick 3 weeks later for $425 to a woman whose son had just left for boot camp. I used the money to buy a bed frame and a mattress for my apartment. It was the first bed I had owned in almost 2 years. The Crown Victoria is still on Rico's lot, or it was the last time I called. Esteban drove it for 9 months and bought himself a Honda Accord in the summer of 2022. The Crown Victoria came back. Rico told me last spring that it had carried 4 different men since I drove it off the lot. He told me he would let me know when it finally died. Tonight, somewhere in America, there is a man on a bench in a Greyhound station. Another man is watching him from across the room. The watching man has a pen in his shirt pocket and a Vietnam veteran ball cap on his head. The 2 men will not speak for 20 minutes. Then the watching man will stand up, write an address on a napkin, and hand it to the man on the bench. The system inside the system is still working. If you served, drop your branch and your years in the comments. If you have ever bought a vehicle to survive, tell us what you bought and what it cost. If you know a Rico in your city, do not give us his name or his address, but tell us he is there. The first step in keeping the next generation of men alive is making sure the men who run these lots know that what they do is seen. Subscribe if you want to keep finding out what the system would prefer you never learn. Next time, we go inside the 4-day journey a Vietnam veteran took to get a single appointment at a VA hospital, and the form letter that arrived 11 months later explaining why his claim had been denied without anyone reading it.